Okay, I think that's our signal that we're about at time to start. So, my name is Kevin Dierendorf. I have a blog called Mazer Patrol, and the plan is to eventually put all these presentations that I am doing at the convention up on YouTube. So I'm going to talk about a lot of titles today, but if you want to go back and reference things, eventually they should be up on YouTube, barring some sort of disaster. So just a heads up about that. But yeah, how is everybody enjoying G-Fest so far? One of my favorite things to do at the convention is go and see all of the guests talking and sharing their stories about the creation of the movies that we all love. And sometimes they have really interesting, fun anecdotes, and you sit back and think, wow, this is like this could be a movie in and of itself. That's something that is kind of become a bit of a subgenre, is movies about the making of movies. There's a mantra, it's very common in Hollywood, but it's a good writing mantra in general, is write what you know, write things that you're familiar about. And as it so happens, the people who make movies are familiar with making movies, so it's a good subject for them to extrapolate on. And some of these movies are very strictly adapted from real life events, and some take things into wild, unexpected places and really go into unusual subject matter that you wouldn't expect from this kind of subgenre. So this is really quite prevalent in Hollywood, and where Hollywood goes, so goes Japan. There's a whole subgenre of Japanese movies and fiction about the making of movies and other creative arts. So if there's movies about the making of horror films or animation or dramas, like I wonder if there are similar kind of movies about the making of kaiju and tokusatsu and superhero things. And if you're here at this panel and read what it's about, I think you have an idea of where we're going with this. So it turns out there's quite a few, and I'm going to kick things off with the Boss Coffee commercials, because this is something that is pretty widely distributed and I think a lot of people would be familiar with, and it features Haruo Nakajima as kind of a focus piece. There's a coffee commercial called A Faceless Star in 2019, really as a celebration of Nakajima's career, and it's got this really great recreated 1954 costume, and it features him stomping around on a set and really goes on and on about, oh, this guy was so tough and really put his 100% in and didn't get any credit, and he's just doing it for the love of the game, etc., etc., and is celebrating him and really trying to, link him to the type of people that drink this coffee, I guess. They actually did another follow-up commercial because this first one was so successful. They did one called Impact of the Blue Day, and it's just a celebration of Japanese special effects in general. So it goes through and showcases all kinds of different special effects that have been used over the decades, from rear projection to wind fans, miniatures, etc., etc. And it's a nice little montage, and it's a little bit jingoistic because it is kind of like this Japanese superior handcrafted special effects, etc., etc. But it's a nice kind of point of pride to celebrate the whole craft. But this wasn't actually the first celebration of Nakajima, but he for a long time didn't get credit. He was kind of, as it says, a faceless star. When he first played Godzilla, they didn't want to admit that Godzilla was a man in a suit, so they didn't really parade him out or kind of give him the acknowledgement for the first few films. And then once they did acknowledge that Godzilla was this one guy, they really started celebrating it. And you can see this in the 1967 episode of He of the Sun, where Nakajima plays a kaiju suit actor and basically helps one of the characters. He plays a suit actor who's like bad at acting, and then he gets into the ring with like a professional boxer and becomes more confident that way. I haven't actually seen this episode. It's very difficult to track down, but there are screenshots available online. This is actually the first Toho television series that was ever done in color. And you can see Kira from Ultraman is also in this, going up against the gyro suit that Nakajima is in. Another kind of Showa example of making of kaiju movies is in Pink Lady's big motion picture. So Pink Lady was a music duo in the 70s. They actually had a US television series called Pink Lady and Jeff. But they were very popular, and they eventually had a motion picture, and their motion picture is about them making a motion picture. And it's kind of an anthology format where they're trying all kinds of different ideas. So they have like, well, what if we make our movie a Western? What if we make it a melodrama? And of course, one of these is a sci-fi. So there are these pink alien monsters that were actually made by the same guy that made Anguirus and the Godzilla Tower and Gorosaurus. This movie is directed by Tom Kotani, who also directed The Last Dinosaur, and it's available on Fansubs if you want to check it out. Going on from there, I think I want to acknowledge another piece of, this isn't a Showa thing, but it's talking about Showa movie filmmaking. This is Blue Blazes. This is a Japanese drama based on Kazuhiko Shimamoto's autobiography. And he went to Osaka University of Arts in the 1980s, and all of his classmates went on to become huge industry bigwigs. So a big focus of this is Shimamoto's rivalry with his classmate Hideaki Anno, who is portrayed as an antisocial weirdo, and it's absolutely fantastic because it has recreations of a lot of Anno's student films that he made in college. He, before he went on to, make Shin Ultraman, he really cut his teeth doing things like his own version of Ultraman, where he's just on a playground wrestling with his friends in a jacket, but he uses this kind of similar sound effects and optical techniques that you see in the real Ultraman stuff. And then you also get scenes where like Hideaki Anno is just in the bathtub playing Ultra 7 because he's a grown man weirdo. So this was quite a successful J-drama, and then Shimamoto actually did a follow-up to it after Shin Godzilla hit. So this was a little comic that was sold at Comic-Con, so it's kind of the reunion thing. And Shinji Higuchi also makes an appearance next to the much younger-looking Anno here. This is not the only time that Anno was made into a character, because he's just such an interesting, very prolific, very influential, but strange auteur of a filmmaker. So there's also Insufficient Direction, which was actually by Anno's wife, Moyoka Anno. So she did a manga that was then turned into an anime, and they actually made figures of Anno and his wife in this, so you can own a very cute, super deformed version of him here. So this anime had a follow-up in 2016 where it's giving a metaphor for his kind of struggles with depression in the creative process and his burnout, where he plays a farmer, and each project that he is working on is just a bigger and bigger radish that he's farming. So this was done for the 10th anniversary of Kara. So, he's goes and he's farming, and he pulls out a big radish. That's the first Evangelion movie, and then he is feeling really tired, and then he pulls out a big radish that's the second Evangelion movie, and everybody's helping him out. And then his friends come along and they say, hey, let's go to other farms and let's work on other vegetables. And then Shin Godzilla is just the biggest radish anyone has ever seen. One of the earliest tokusatsu movies is The Great Buddha Arrival. This was from 1934 and is unfortunately a lost film. And there was a movie made about it by Hiroto Yokokawa, and a lot of people call this a remake of the original movie, but it's really not. It's about a reporter kind of investigating the mysteries surrounding the lost 1934 movie, and then a giant Buddha actually appears in the film. So the reporter is making his own film, but it's also about this lost film. So it's very kind of meta and very surreal. This is a strange movie, but I did want to clear this up, that this is not actually about the making of the lost film, and it's not a remake of the lost film. But this was Yokokawa's debut, and that kind of paved the groundwork for his next, which was Nezura 1964. So if anyone's not familiar with Nezura, this was a Daiei film that was partially produced and was a disaster. And when it was canceled, that's what led through the creation of the original Gamera, is they had all of these miniatures and they weren't able to use them for Nezura, so they went ahead and made Gamera. This movie was made with the cooperation of Kadokawa, and because of that, I think that's why they kind of dial it back a little bit and don't show just what a disaster this film's production was. I think this is something that has a lot of great potential because there's all sorts of stories about, this is kind of like a Burt I. Gordon style rats attacking the city movie. So they used real feral sewer rats to attack their miniatures, which is a terrible idea. If you're ever making a movie, do not do this. The movie was basically canceled by the health department and they wound up burning all of the rats. They don't mention that the way they got the rats to react is that they put little electric plates and shocked them to make them jump up and down. I think that would have made Daiei/Kadokawa look bad, and I think they probably wouldn't want them to have that in the movie. There's a nice little coda at the end where the CEO of Daiei, who's played by Yukijiro Hotaru from the Gamera trilogy, gets inspired to make Gamera from seeing some fireworks going off. This conflicts with the official story of how Gamera was made, though, so you can kind of see some creative liberties here. Another kind of giant of the industry is, of course, the prolific suit maker Keizo Murase, who did dozens and dozens of kaiju costumes and worked on all sorts of other facets of the industry, including being in the mighty Peking Man suit. And he directed his very first movie in 2024, just before he passed. And this is a very strange film because this is basically his own self-eulogy. It's set at a funeral for a suit maker who is basically Keizo Murase, and they tell all of these stories about the movies that he made that are basically Keizo Murase's movies within it. But it's also a bit of a portal fantasy where his granddaughter kind of gets pulled into the world of an unmade movie that he hasn't made. And goes through adventures that are within it. This movie was just licensed by SRS recently, so it's playing at festivals now. It should be playing in theaters, and you can reach out to your local theater if you want to have it play there. Another great figure in the tokusatsu industry is, of course, Tsuburaya Productions, and there's a number of films about the making of their works. So the first of these would be The Men That Made Ultraman, which is a television film, and it's basically a love letter to Akio Jisoji. It's very much based on his autobiography, and it would have you think that he did much more work on Ultraman than he did, so it will kind of attribute lots of things to being his idea that were perhaps not if you look at other documentation, but it's, I guess, good for the narrative that way. This movie itself is mostly focused on a couple of Jisoji's particular episodes, so it focuses a lot on the scene in episode 34 where Hayata wants to transform into Ultraman and he pulls out a spoon by accident, and they have a big back and forth of like, oh, he wouldn't make this mistake, and Jisoji is so very correctly being, no, this is going to be funny, people will love it, and people do love that scene, so that's fair enough. And this was actually Shinji Higuchi's very first work on the Ultraman franchise, is he was working on the special effects for this film, recreating the special effects for the classic episodes. So he basically rebuilt a lot of the studio stage stuff, trying to make it look as close to the original show as possible, a couple decades later. And, Higuchi went on to do all sorts of things like Shin Ultraman, etc. And you have a lot of cameos from Tsuburaya staples, like Toll Narita is played by original Ultraman actor Susumu Kurobe, etc., etc. So this was a successful television film, and there was this kind of a run of similar ones that came thereafter. So the next would be My Beloved Ultra 7, which is a biopic about Yuriko Hishimi, who plays and Yuri in the show. And this version has a lot of facts in it that are kind of extrapolated and not fully accurate, but you see them get repeated as fact because they're in this biopic and a lot of people just assume that they are true. So for an example in this, Hishimi is kind of brought in at the last minute to replace an existing actress. That's actually Mitsuko Hoshi's backstory from the production of Ultraman Ace. They just kind of swapped her with another Ultraman actress. And there's also this incident that is manufactured for the film where they're filming an unmade episode called The Revenge of 300 Years, where there's a giant inflatable Ultra 7 hand and it's supposed to pick her up, but it collapses and she's going to asphyxiate, and she's so traumatized by this that Eiji Tsuburaya says, oh no, we'll never air this episode because you were so scarred by it for life. And that's completely fabricated for this film, but sometimes you see it repeated as though it's something that really happened. In reality, that episode just wasn't ever filmed because it was too expensive to actually make. There's a couple of noteworthy actors in this, including Seijun Suzuki as Eiji Tsuburaya, and Tomoro Taguchi, who's best known as Tetsuo the Iron Man, plays Koichi Takano. And we also have Shiro Sano, who you might remember from GMK, for example, as Tetsuo Kinjo, and he shows up in a number of these films. So from there we get the Man Who Wanted to Be Ultraman, and this is actually a fully fictitious drama. And it's set in the current day, which was 1993 when this was produced, which, if you remember, at that point in time, Ultraman was basically not an existing franchise. There were a few sporadic entries here and there, but there wasn't an ongoing television series or anything. And it's very prescient because this movie, despite the fact that it's 1993, is about a group of special effects technicians who are all being laid off because CGI is taking over the industry. So nothing has changed in the decades since here because this is an ongoing story. This has unfortunately never been released to DVD, but it's from what I've seen of it, it seems like a hoot. It kind of has a big production of a last hurrah movie before the main technician who gets laid off winds up working at an amusement park, kind of doing stage show suits, much like the stage show that's going on in the other room right now. More recently, we had a documentary called The Two Ultramen, and this is a biopic mostly about Tetsuo Kinjo, but also about his friendship with Shozo Uehara. They were both from Okinawa, so they kind of bonded on set, and this kind of goes over their journey, basically the creation of Ultra Q all the way up through Mighty Jack, and then with the death of Tsuburaya, Kinjo really had a bad time. He was basically a member of the Tsuburaya family, and he kind of fell into alcoholism and went back to Okinawa and kind of had a depressing rest of his life. This was actually originally planned to be made back in 1995 with Shiro Sano to play Kinjo, but here he's played by another actor who is actually Okinawan, so it works out a little bit better in terms of representation and casting. This was really well regarded as a drama. It won a bunch of awards. But unfortunately, I don't believe it's been fan subbed, so hopefully it gets picked up and somebody is able to get it distributed more widely. It's only from a few years ago, so there's plenty of time. But I mentioned this was originally going to be made in 1995 and kind of fell through. But Uehara basically took a consolation prize because he still wanted to do something about the making of Ultraman. So what he did instead was he made an episode of Ultraman Tiga in 1996. And in this episode, the main character, Daigo, goes back in time and meets the original Ultraman, who shows up and inspires Eiji Tsuburaya to make the show Ultraman. This is during the creation of Ultra Q, so you get lots of scenes of Tsuburaya and company directing episodes of Ultra Q when he meets Ultraman at the lake in Fukushima, which is in the first episode, but is also in Tsuburaya's hometown. And Hajime Tsuburaya, the son of Eiji Tsuburaya, is actually played by his own son, Hiroshi Tsuburaya, in this episode. But this episode was also written as a tribute to Kinjo, so there's a lot of Okinawan kind of subtext that's thrown into it. So the monster in this, Yanakargi, is actually from the Okinawan word for ugly face. So I guess it's an ugly monster. This isn't the first time that Ultraman's gotten kind of meta this way. There's also an episode in 1980 of Ultraman 80 where a child is transformed into a monster. This is commonly a thing that happens in Ultraman episodes like Kanagon, etc., etc. But what's kind of fun in this is this monster, Tetsuon, which is named after suit actor Tetsuo Yamamura. His friends kind of aren't taking it seriously. They're like, oh, cool, our friend is a monster. Now we can make monster movies and like put him on a set, having him fight an Ultraman that we're playing. Another very wild, out there take on the creation of Ultraman is an episode of Shushutorian, and this is one of Toei's Fushigi comedy series. You might notice that Toei's Fushigi comedy is made by Toei, and they generally don't collaborate very much with Tsuburaya, but Tsuburaya was really in a lull in 1993. They weren't producing very much, and Kazuo Tsuburaya, I guess because he was a fan of Shushutorian, really went out of his way to make this crossover happen. So they basically allowed Toei full access to the Tsuburaya lot, able to use all of the suits, anything that they wanted to do to get this to happen. So in this episode, the three magical girls team up with Ultraman because Ultraman monsters start appearing in the real world. They go over to Tsuburaya Productions to kind of investigate. They meet a nice, kindly groundskeeper who's played by Susumu Kurobe, and you find out at the end of the episode that he is in fact actually Ultraman. So that's some Ultraman backstory, but people might also be curious about the creation of Kamen Rider. And there's a number of stories about the creation of Kamen Rider by the prolific mangaka Shotaro Ishinomori, who did more pages of manga than any other person, more pages of comic books than any other person who's ever lived. And he had a very kind of rough life. His sister died very young, and it was very traumatic. He kind of was trained by the great Osamu Tezuka, the god of manga, who created Astro Boy, etc., etc. But there's a biopic from 2018 that really goes up through the creation of Kamen Rider and the input that Ishinomori's own son had to put into it. And of all of the ones, I would recommend checking this one out, but there's actually quite the number of films that go into Shotaro Ishinomori, from very accurate ones like Youth at Tokiwa, which is really about Ishinomori and Fujio Fujiko and a number of other prolific mangaka that were all being trained by Tezuka, living together in this one cramped apartment building, and Ishinomori's sister kind of doting on all of them before she passed away, unfortunately. And then there's also really crazy ones like the Cyborg 009 episode where he shows up, and that basically is like a Stephen King insert cameo kind of thing where he shows up and helps the main characters. Similar deal with the Saber Zenkaiger crossover movie. It's basically Kamen Rider Sager and the Super Sentai series Zenkaiger, where the villains are going back in time and impacting Ishinomori's ability to create these iconic characters. But Ishinomori, in turn, had a prolific student named Go Nagai. And there's a great biographical manga about him also. This is called Gekiman. And the first arc of it, the first 6 volumes, are all about the creation of Devilman. And I just wanted to point out that he goes into explicitly saying that his concept for Devilman is very much wanting to do a kaiju thing. And so when Devilman gets brought up in the kaiju conversation, some people say, oh, this is too off topic. And I say, well, his initial concept was very much he wanted to talk about monsters. And in this manga, you can see very explicitly he has like Godzilla, Rodan, and Ghidorah like on his mind, literally on the panel, as he's pitching the idea. The director Kazuo Kanaka, who directed Ultraman the Next and a lot of Ultraman Nexus and several other Tokusatsu films over the years, made an autobiographical feature film just a couple of years ago, and this is a fantastic film. It's called Single 8, and this is talking about his experience in the 1970s. It's right after Star Wars came out, and he and his friends really want to do something similar. This has been highly acclaimed because many directors like Kiyoshi Kurosawa and Hirokazu Koreeda, Shinichiro Ueda, all have similar kind of feelings about this. And I suspect that any Western filmmakers would have gone through similar experiences with their friends, making Super 8mm films and really trying to figure out how to do these effects in terms of having people walking backwards and then trying to make it look like time is reversing, or projecting miniatures on top of larger sets, etc., etc. This movie is mostly accurate to Konaka's actual life, and at the end credits you do see his actual student films juxtaposed with the ones in the movie. The only kind of manufactured element of this is the romance storyline that wasn't actually based on anything. This also came out coincidentally like around the same month as The Fabelmans, which is Steven Spielberg's biopic, which has a lot of crossover in terms of him going through life making movies as a teenager. Another Japanese film that's pretty fun is In the Hero, and this focuses on a suit actor and his group of suit actor friends. Basically, in the storyline, there's a suit actor who's been in the industry for some 15 or so years and is very well regarded, but he's getting up there in age, and this kind of arrogant pop idol, played by the lead character from Kamen Rider Forze, comes in and wants to basically get in and out, and just kind of has no respect for the craft of suit acting. So this crusty veteran kind of puts him through the ringer, it's a really fun film. The climax is this very over the top scene set in a ninja castle where the old actor has to really prove his merit and nearly get himself killed with this action sequence where he's fighting a whole bunch of ninjas and jumping off of buildings, etc., etc. The younger actor in this actually won a Japanese Academy Award for the part, which is funny because in the film he's talking about how he wants to win an Academy Award all the time. My favorite character in this is the really crusty, really old veteran who always plays Pink Rangers. So you can see in this picture here, he's putting on the Pink Ranger costume, and you watch a Sentai series and it's always like the cute girl character going tee-hee, and then like the guy takes off his helmet and he's like 70 years old and like, oh, I want a cigarette. So a lot of fun. A movie that just came out this year in Japan is Kaiju Yaro, which is kind of a pun title. It could be the Kaiju guy, or it could be like Kaiju, right? And this is a comedy. It's basically a civil servant wants to make a promotional film for his hometown, and the tourism board wants him to make like a very stodgy standard drama, and he does that. And then somebody spills coffee on the motherboard and all the footage is lost. And he's like, well, I guess, what are we gonna do? And he remembers that there's a kaiju director whose name is Eiji Honda, figure out that reference, who just happens to have a whole bunch of his old props and suits in storage nearby. So this guy goes and steals one of the kaiju costumes and decides he's gonna make his own film. And everything is a disaster from there on. I don't know if this has any official US distribution, but I actually caught it on an airplane recently. Sometimes airplanes have different screening territories than traditional distribution methods. And this is also going to play at Japan Cuts in New York City next week. So if you're in that area and you're going to the film festival, you can check it out there. It's going to be on a double feature with the Dynazenon film. A really kooky example is the film Millennium Actress, and this is from the great director Satoshi Kon. And this is about some documentarians who are interviewing a Showa-era film actress who's grown quite elderly now, and she keeps confusing the events that happen in her films with events that happen in real life. And she keeps giving these anecdotes, and the anecdotes get progressively weirder throughout the course of the film. And one of my favorite parts is where she talks about the time a kaiju attacked her. So this is like the height of absurdity, but it really plays in well with Satoshi Kon's whole gimmick. If you watch any of his films or his TV series, Paranoia Agent, they're all about characters that are kind of having a difficult time discerning fantasy and dreams from reality, and they keep you on your toes. So this is a great film, and it's actually only rated PG, so you can show it with the kids also. One thing that is a classic kids series, but not so much in the US because there is a murder in every single episode, is Detective Conan. This is a long running, it's been on TV every single week since 1996, series in Japan. It's about a group of children who go on adventures, and there's always murders going on. So they solve these murders. And in episode 63, there is a chance where they get to go on the set at Taiho Studios, which is legally distinct, and they see the final film for Gomorrah, which, if you remember, this was made in 1997. This is right after Godzilla vs. Destroyer, so they're really playing on the final Godzilla film. And actually, the author of Detective Conan went on set and saw some of that. So you can see in the 13th volume of Detective Conan in the Japanese edition, there's actually maser tanks in the background because he was on set being able to film that. But anyway, they're on set for the final Gomorrah movie, and somebody gets into the Gomorrah costume and stabs the CEO for canceling the series. So then it's up to Conan and friends to figure out, like, well, who was in this costume, what was their weight, what are the footprints, et cetera, that kind of thing, to suss out who done it, basically. And Detective Conan's been going on for years and years, so of course they had to do a kaiju storyline eventually. And then, because it's been going on for years and years, they had to do another one. So they did actually a 4-part series in 2019, and they kind of sold this as a movie that you can watch all 4 parts together. It's basically the length of a movie, and this is an original story. It's not based on anything that's in the manga. But this was actually the first episode that got dubbed after a 14-year break between the last dubs and the new dubs, which also says a lot about how long Detective Conan's been on. But this episode has kind of a party going on for the premiere of the Gomorrah versus Kamen Yaiba movie. And one of the workers at the studio goes into the back, and somebody pushes over one of the kaiju suits so its tusks impale him and he dies. And you can see that in the screenshot there. Another anime example is in Pokemon. There's an episode called An Epic Self-Defense Force. And this is actually on Tubi. It was dubbed, so despite the fact that there's a lot of Japanese-ness in it, they were apparently fine with bringing this one over to America. And there's lots of references to both Ultraman and the classic Toho movie monsters. But basically in this episode, Ash and friends get drafted by one of their buddies into a movie-making contest. So they have access to the studio and all of their props and technology and stuff, and they make their own little kaiju movie featuring different Pokemon as the kaiju. But for being a kids-friendly show, they go into a lot of stuff about the wire work and the green screens and other things that I think is a great primer for all of the work that goes into making special effects in a tokusatsu like this. A little bit goofier is there's an episode of Magic Project S, which was a spin-off of Tenchi Muyo. It's a magical girl show, so if you've seen Sailor Moon, this is kind of the idea. But in this, the main character gets brought in to guest star in an episode of something called Cool Ranger. And of course, the villains of Magical Project S show up on the Cool Ranger set and start turning everybody into these big, goofy-looking monster suits, and the monster of the week is made to look like a film reel camera. A little bit more anime. Samurai Flamenco is a crazy, crazy, crazy show from 2013. I don't want to spoil anything, but early on, it's about this guy, basically, who is a do-it-yourself superhero. He dresses up as a superhero and goes out and fights crime at night because he thinks that's fun to do. But he's also an up-and-coming actor, and in one of the episodes, he gets brought on to do some acting for a superhero show, which is his dream, and he goes up and starts asking the director all of these questions about, like, hey, do you remember such and such episode, blah, 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 and the director's like, man, I'm just here to do my job, like, let me do this, I don't remember any of this, I do this every single week, it's all blurred together. And the main character is very excited, like, oh, I'm gonna do all my stunts like they did in the 70s, and they're like, no, you can't do that anymore, like, if you have an accident, it's gonna make the production slow, and it's very kind of, like, disillusioning. But then also the main character's mentor is very much a pastiche of Kenji Oba, the guy that played Space Sheriff Gavan, who's just like, I'm gonna ride to set on a horse and like jump off of it because that's fun to do, and then he also gets looped into the whole like crime fighting thing later. There's an episode of Dinosaur War Eisenborg that features some behind-the-scenes movie making. And if you're not familiar with Eisenborg, this is a Tsuburaya Giant Hero show that is all done in live action, except the people are done in animation. So it's the opposite of the way that it would actually be cheap to make something. But they go on to set for the making of an Eisenborg movie at one point, and you can see some examples here of them. I don't know how they rigged all of this up to have the animated people pulling up the props for the live action footage if they did it with rotoscoping, et cetera, but this is a wild show. Some more Tsuburaya suits actually show up in Space Sheriff Gavan. So there's an episode that's takes place at Toto Studios, not to be confused with that other studio, where a kaiju film is being made. And of course, because this is an episode of Gavan, it's a trap by the evil Maku to get Gavan good, and he winds up fighting through all sorts of different movie genres as he tries to escape the studio. But yeah, you get Fireman and Mirror Man monsters showing up in one of the scenes. I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit because there are a few more things to go through. In the film Guyver from 1991, there's a comic relief scene where one of the real monster zoonoids wanders his way into a film set and basically gets co-opted because he's an awkward monster into acting in a scene, being a little confused as to what's going on. The Scream Queen Linnea Quigley acts against him also and isn't very convinced by his actual monsterness as a monster suit. But then the actual monster that shows up and is confusing everyone after the real monster leaves is the Marlin Man, which was a costume made by Michael S. Deek, who worked on Zarkor the Invader and Kra the Sea Monster. There's an episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, which is a DC superhero thing that involves a bunch of time travel, and they meet all sorts of real-life historical figures. And one of these episodes, they meet Ishiro Honda in 1951. In this episode, Honda sees them fight a giant octopus on one of his World War II film sets, and that inspires him to get into to making giant monsters, which is not really accurate to Honda's story. You could probably swap him out with Eiji Tsuburaya and have it be a little bit more accurate on that front. But there are references to the making of the Blue Pearl, and also they talk about Honda going through Hiroshima in a scene that's really very striking when he describes it, like his experience going through Hiroshima after the war, and like thinking like, oh, there's no people here, oh, the people were all vaporized, I can feel them in the air. And it was just also not a thing that actually happened to Honda, but it's he did go through Hiroshima like on a train and saw the devastation, but he wasn't out kind of like in the streets experiencing it. So It's some creative liberty, but I mean, in real life, he probably also didn't encounter any DC superheroes in 1951. So this is G-Fest. I want to give a shout out to the film The Man in the Green Suit, which debuted here 2 years ago. And this is about a guy that gets trapped in a kaiju suit and basically goes rampaging through the studio. I don't believe this has been like re-uploaded anywhere, so I don't know the best way to see it aside from going back in time 2 years to G-Fest. But there is another project also called The Man in the Suit, which is like a YouTube horror thing. So you know, if you're Googling for it, don't be confused or led astray. This year, there's a film called Kaiju Kid. There's actually 2 films called Kaiju Kid in the G-Fest lineup this year. This is a French short about actor in the 70s. So I haven't been able to see it yet, but hopefully it's good. What is good is Machi Action. This is another story about like the old veteran suit guy and his rival who comes in, who's kind of a young, arrogant punk. This is a Taiwanese film, and basically really shows the schism between the old Showa-style actor and the hip new Heisei style actor who comes in to kind of replace him, and how the old one is kind of old and busted, but the new one can learn all of the grit and what it takes to be a good person and heroism and all of that from the older guy. There's a partial plot about copyright protections, which is something that is an ongoing thing with real life Ultraman, etc., etc. And also the enemy monsters suit actor, who doesn't get any credit in this film, is a big part, because there's all these scenes where kids come up and they want autographs from the hero, and then the guy that's in the monster suit is like, hey, you want my autograph? And they just kind of look at him funny and run away. So respect your monster suit actors, people. There's a Filipino film called Blue Bustamante, I believe that's the pronunciation. Maskman and Bioman were super popular in the Philippines in the 90s. So this is set in the 90s, and it's about a Filipino guy who goes overseas and is working in one of these shows really to make ends meet. I don't believe there's any translations for this one yet. There's a Korean film called Almost Love from 2005. This is a drama about 2 actors that meet on the set of a Sentai style thing, and they kind of like are dating other people, and they start to like get jealous of the dating, and they fall in love with each other, etc., etc. But there's a lot of there's a few fun scenes. The main actor really wants to be the new Jackie Chan, but he feels like he's stuck doing this kind of suit acting. And also he gets lit on fire a lot because they're setting off pyrotechnics near him. And that's a story that many of our actors who have been here at G-Fest can relate to. In fact, we got Noboru Kaneko just yesterday talking about them setting off too many explosives too close to him. This being G-Fest XXX, I did feel like I should give a shout out to Naked Ambition, which is a Hong Kong Category 3 movie about a guy that goes into the adult film industry. And while it has a whole thing with adult films, a lot of them are parodies of other things, but the climax is this big battle that he has against a number of actresses who are all dressed up as giant monsters in this Ultraman parody. But again, this is an adult film, so don't watch it if you are too young. But it was filmed in 3D. It played in big theaters in Hong Kong, so it's not like it's like a particularly underground, seedy kind of movie. Along the lines of adult actors, there's this manga series called Gigant from 2019, where an adult film actress gains the powers of growing huge, and she fights monsters. One of the craziest things about this is there's a storyline where she acts in a movie called Papiko vs. Godzilla, and the director that they get to do this movie is Takashi Yamazaki. This manga's from 2019. So the author Hiroya Oku, I guess because of Yamazaki's long history, decided that this would be a an accurate portrayal, and I guess it's, aside from having Godzilla fight Papico, came true, but you know, we never know what might be in Godzilla -2. There have been a number of kaiju cameos, things that were about general films about making of filmmaking, where Godzilla kind of briefly shows up. You know, Pee-wee's Big Adventure is the most famous one, where Pee-wee rides to a set where Godzilla is fighting King Ghidorah, and Toho actually sued over that one. But you know, Godzilla also shows up in All About Our House, which is a film about a screenwriter trying to come up with ideas. Hollywood Boulevard is a kind of wacky comedy. And The Bad News Bears Goes to Japan also has a kaiju sequence, which features some extra outer space reused assets. Well, we've got more slides to go through, but I will leave things off with 28½. This is a Mamoru Oshii mockumentary about the making of his Gigantor stage musical that is awful. So it's shown as everybody thinks that making a musical stage production out of Gigantors is a bad idea, and the people are just kind of milling about the set, and Oshii himself is largely absent, and people are always talking about, where's the director? And then at the end of it, you get all of these cameos from real-life major directors, including Shinji Higuchi, Takashi Miike, Kenji Kamiyama, etc., getting interviewed of like, so did you like the stage musical? And they're like, And Oshii is a weird artistic filmmaker. You can tell the title of this is a homage to Federico Fellini. So he kind of does things at his own pace. This is very much a movie that he made to amuse himself, but I think his fans will also be amused by it. All right, well, we are, I think we're unfortunately at 45 minutes past, but if anybody has questions, I will be around, and we can chat about whatever. Thank you for coming.